Okay, good morning.
Just with
Welcome and thank you for coming. I'm going to read our land acknowledgement this morning, hopefully without flubs. Here is the land acknowledgement. We would like to recognize that we are settlers on the land of indigenous people. We especially acknowledge the Potawatomi, who in the 1700s traveled south around Lake Michigan, and the Miami, part of a loose confederation of tribes called the Illinois. May we remember our collective history, and may our time together help us to dismantle the continued settler colonialism and white supremacy, which are legacies of that history. May we together reimagine and create a future in which we inhabit this land in stewardship, kinship, and abundant love for all. And I will introduce Dave Beckman.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Carl, and good morning to all. I'm so happy to see you here today, and so happy that we have some nice weather, and we're just going to have a program this morning to understand the importance of soil. And my name is Dave Backman. I am president of Greening Greater Racine. I also am a member of this church, and I want to welcome you to the Lutheran Church of the Resurrection Nature Prairie. As time permits, please explore and enjoy. You may spot something as mundane as a robin or a squirrel, or something more interesting like a coyote or even a wild turkey, as I have, crossing through here. Before I proceed further, I want to acknowledge the person who has worked tirelessly for more than a decade to create this green space, the person who is most responsible for these natural surroundings in the heart of Racine. She is a retired Racine Unified Librarian, a former Unified Teacher of the Year, a member of this congregation, and a humble, true friend of the environment. I did not know a pollinator garden from a rain garden until I met Marilyn Keeman. Marilyn, could you please stand and be recognized? Thank you so much. Thank you, my good friend, for all you have done to defend God's extraordinary creation. I also want to thank Sonali Kanotek and her husband Peter for getting the ball rolling to make this event possible, and I want to acknowledge all our speakers for your time and commitment. Goodland students and teachers, Honorable Mayor Mason, my fellow speakers, ladies and gentlemen, we are not alone this morning. Gathered here, we are but a tiny fraction of some 3.9 billion human beings who are actively engaged in addressing soil conservation and food insecurity. We will be speaking and listening and learning as part of a United Nations convention that has been organized to battle desertification. Because of natural processes or too often by human activity, desertification happens when land is degraded to a point where biological activity in the soil is lost, where once fertile areas are left arid and unable to support plant growth, where people no longer are able to grow crops because the microbial life in the soil has died. Dear guests, Can you imagine if this calming, verdant space had no plant life? Can you picture it as just lifeless, barren dirt? Such an ugly landscape is entirely possible if all of us do not begin right now, to educate ourselves, our friends, our families, and everyone else we know about how important it is to protect and to rebuild our soils. In preparing my remarks to read to you today, I was saddened to learn that the fruits and vegetables I pride myself on eating are in fact not as nutritious as those that I ate when I was in 3rd and 4th grade. Why is my body getting fewer vitamins and minerals in the food I consume today? Because the soils of North America have been depleted of their ability to raise food by an estimated 50% since I was a boy in elementary school. Throughout history, many ugly events began because people were hungry. They resorted to violence to resolve their problems. The French Revolution, it started as a bread riot. In large measure, because we have not properly cared for our soils, our species risks suffering a replay of these kinds of events, but on a much larger scale. What makes the situation potentially more dangerous now, in our time, is that there are many more billions of human beings living on Earth than in past centuries. Many more billions at risk of starving and going to war over food. Fortunately, it is not too late to act, and I am very excited to share with you that some of us today already are helping to prevent that doomsday scenario I speak of. Ladies and gentlemen, these students and others from Goodland School, Montessori School, down the street, are working now for the soil. You should know that they are collecting their lunch leftovers and are composting this material in their gardens. They have gone so far as to ask their cafeteria staff to not put cheese on salads so that only vegetable leftovers are being composted. I think that's pretty exciting. That's starting at a young age. They have planted a vegetable garden and donated extra vegetables to the needy during summer. They are learning how vegetables are grown, harvested, and prepared for the table. I can tell you that Goodland has received a grant to create a rain garden and is waiting for a grant to create a pollinator garden on the school grounds, a project that will help students learn about different types of soil and how that affects plants. These kinds of activities are critical to keeping our soil healthy. We thank the leadership of Goodland School, the teachers, staff, and students for all their efforts, and we wish them the best in their projects as a new growing season begins. I am extremely excited to see how your gardens grow. Can we have another round of applause for the students of Goodland Montessori School? Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce someone who I know is not afraid to get his hands dirty when it comes to protecting the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mayor of Racine, the Honorable Corey Mason.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We can do a little bit better than that. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. All right, that's great. That's great. So I'm very excited to be here with all of you today. This is a lot of dear friends that are here today and new young friends that I'm meeting here too. It's a perfect time of the year to talk about soil. It's that time of year when the snow starts to thaw and you can smell the soil when it starts to get a little bit warmer. It's a great time to think about soil and what it means. Believe it or not, the soil that we have in Wisconsin, particularly this part of the state, is actually some of the best soil in the country. People came here and settled here in part because the soil was so fertile and so great. And so it's easy to overlook it because it's underneath your feet all the time. And you think, oh, this is just part of the way it is. But we know that in other parts of the world, they are losing their soils. The interplay of water and soil and how it all works together, it really makes a big difference. And even Racine, its name, does anybody know where the name Racine comes from?
France.
A little bit louder. It means root. That's right. It is French for root. But before it was called Racine or the Root River, does anybody know what the Potawatomi called it? So the word that they used was Kipikawi, and that also means root. So it's always been called the Root River in one language or another. The Potawatomi called it the Root River. The French called it Racine. We now call it the Root. Same river, name, 3 different languages. But the reason I bring it up around soil is the reason that Kipikawi called it that was in reference to the plants that they could plant along the river. And they would use that to trade food and make food from those plants. So really, the state of our soil has always been part of our story from the beginning, since when the Potawatomi were here. It's such an important piece of it. In Madison, at the University of Wisconsin, there's an agronomy building, and it's actually an entire building and an entire major for the study of dirt. It's dedicated to dirt. And so you might think, what is there that you could possibly talk about? An entire building, an entire field of study. But it turns out it's critically important to the food that we rely on, for the way water moves around, and whether or not we have to build big infrastructure because we've maybe paved over too much of the soil. It really plays into our daily lives in ways that you can't imagine. So it's easy to look at the soil underneath your feet and take it for granted, but I'm sure as you guys begin to plant those gardens and get your hands in there and start to think about it and watch things grow, you'll see that future take root as the Potawatomi did and the French did and we do here today. So one of the great things I get to do as mayor is proclamations. I get to proclaim things on the official side of what the city is and what we're standing for. And in concert with what you're doing here today, I do have a proclamation around Save Soil that I'm going to read to you all now. It's a proclamation from the city of Racine. It says, whereas Save Soil is a global movement launched by Sadhguru, the founder and head of the Isha Foundation, and is a joint initiative with Conscious Planet to unite world leaders, visionaries, influencers, and citizens of all nations behind a common purpose to restore and safeguard the world's soil. And whereas Save Soil, supported by the United Nations Environmental Program, the World Food Program, and other eminent institutions, aims to address the global soil crisis by bringing awareness to 52% of the world's agriculture soils are already degraded, and by 2050, 90% of Earth's soils could be degraded. And whereas soil degradation leads to nutritional deficiencies, food insecurity, water shortages, adverse climate changes, loss of biodiversity, mass migration, and the proposed solution is to advocate for policies across all nations to increase organic content in agricultural soil to a minimum of 3 to 6%. And whereas the city of Racine has numerous community gardens promoting locally grown food and care for the earth, and whereas the city of Racine and surrounding communities are actively pursuing sustainability initiatives such as food waste composting, now therefore I, Corey Mason, Mayor of the city of Racine, Wisconsin, do hereby proclaim March 21st as Save Soil Day and the week of March 20th through 25th as Save Soil Week. Soil is vital to all life, and I urge all people to be part of the Save Soil movement to create a brighter future for our children and our planet. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Racine to be affixed. So here it is. So thank you very much for that. Next, I get to introduce a student, I believe, who I got to speak to earlier. Oh, let me prep.
Could we do one photo too?
Oh, sure. Let me do a picture real quick. Thank you. So I do get to introduce a student next, and I do want to say, as somebody who has 3 kids and those kids being worried about climate change and the future of the earth and what it all means, I'm so inspired by young people and how much they care about the future of this planet and what it means, and it's really going to be your generation pushing your parents and your grandparents to do the work that we need to do. Now, the city of Racine is moving to electric buses. We're putting solar panels on our buildings. We're beginning to do the work that we need to do to address our part about climate change, to preserve the soils under feet and make sure that we don't have bigger and more frequent storms because of climate change. But it really comes down to the young people like all of you who are interested in this and really encouraging people like me who are older. And, you know, I mean, I have a 14-year-old who will say to me, well, Dad, what are you doing this month to try to save the planet? And she wants to know, because it's the world that you all will get to inherit. And we have a responsibility to you and future generations to be able to do that. So it is my privilege to introduce a student I got to meet just before we came up here to talk a little bit about this as well. Kat, can you come on up and share your story? Thanks, Kat.
Hi, my name is Ketalaya. I am a third grader from Goodland Montessori. At our Goodland school, we have a composting team. We have people going around collecting fruits and veggies that kids don't eat and put them in our compost bin. Montessori is planning on adding a new rain garden. In the rain garden, we will grow native plants. In spring and fall, we do small projects. We learn about soil, plants, and trees, and more. In spring, summer, and fall, we have a beautiful garden where we grow fruits, veggies, herbs, and flowers. In our Montessori school, we help clean and take care of the environment around us. Thank you for inviting us today.
Thank you, Kat, and thank you, Mayor Mason. Our next speakers are from the Eco Justice Center, and please welcome Aubrey Gordon and Alex Weinberg.
Hi everyone, my name is Aubrey and I'm the Farm Corps and Property Manager at the Eco Justice Center.
My name is Alex. I'm the Assistant Manager at the Farm Corps program for Eco Justice. I'm also a horticulture student and a soil nerd, so I'm very happy to be here with you all today.
So I just wanted to start off by talking a little bit about the Eco Justice Center in case people aren't familiar. So we are actually an environmental education center and an urban garden, and we do have about 15 acres? A 15-acre plot right by Cliffside Park, which is right off of McNair Road, which is right off of 6 Mile, because lots of people don't know where we're at. And our space is actually open to the public, so if any of you would like to come, we would love to see all you there. And we do a lot of fun things, like we do no-till vegetable and fruit production, we do wildlife and pollinator habit restoration. Then we do nature-focused day camps, which this summer it's actually going to be a lot about gardening, which we're excited about. And then you guys probably are familiar with our alpacas, because that's what most people are familiar with. And then we do have goats and chickens as well. And then we manage our gardens with organic practices, meaning we don't use any herbicides, pesticides, fertilizers, anything like that. And we do this in order to promote long-term soil health and to protect our waterways and lessen our dependence on fossil fuels. Your turn.
And so like Aubrey said, we use organic practices and no-till practices, and anyone who's tried that out knows it can be kind of tricky, it can be difficult, but we found that putting in the extra work and doing some problem solving, which is the fun part, has been worth it for our long-term soil health. And so while there's no manual that anybody can give you on how to manage your space, your garden, your small farm, I did want to share a couple of the things that we do that you can try out that might help if you want to try out this style of gardening. And in particular, I'd like to focus these points on our young gardeners and future land stewards, because it sounds like they're already doing a lot of it. So it's very exciting. Okay, so the first thing we do at Eco Justice Center with our soil is we acknowledge that it's a living biome, and we strive to disturb that as little as possible. So when I first took an interest in horticulture, I didn't really realize how much life is in our soil. It's teeming with microbes and fungal networks and small insects and arthropods and mammals. And so we don't want to go through and kill all of those things every year with a rototiller. So we do our best to disturb the soil as little as possible. We try to keep it planted to protect it from the sun and to keep weeds from proliferating in the space. And we also move our crops around every year because we acknowledge that in a living system, diseases and pests will build up over time. And by moving our crops around, we kind of keep them guessing. And so we don't have to use pesticides then The second thing we do is, since that system is alive, our soil is alive, it needs to be fed. And so we feed our soil with compost. This has many benefits. So it not only improves the soil texture, it improves the fertility, but also takes our waste products from the farm and puts it right back into our soil. And so this reduces our waste, but it also takes a lot of the carbon that was going to end up in the atmosphere and locks it into our garden beds. So we're also, with this process, mitigating climate change. The third thing we do is we restore native plant populations. And the significance of this is that it not only helps with the amount of irrigating we need to do, and it helps with our runoff that goes into our lake and waterways, but it's also free pest control. A lot of the pests that want to eat your crops have some type of insect or bird or something around here that wants to eat it. So we have to do less work, we don't have to use pesticides, and we let nature do the work for us. And finally, the fourth thing that we do, and it's probably the most important thing we do, is that we share our space, our knowledge, and our harvests with others. We are not an island. We want to teach people, and we want to share our bounty and build community, not only around our space, but soil in general, and around gardening and food production. And so, to recap, we acknowledge that our soil is alive, we feed it with compost, we restore native plant populations, and we share our space, knowledge, and harvest with others. And those are probably the most important things we do, and that all of us could probably do moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, thank you, Aubrey and Alex. At this point, we're going to dismiss the Goodland students to work on some special projects with Emily Jacobson, our church youth director, who is also an educator at Bong Recreation Area in Kenosha County. And do we have the bags for the kids here or the elsewhere?
They're down there.
They're down there. Okay, great. Thanks for coming, kids. Great to see you. Okay, we're gonna move around the agenda here, and I want to introduce someone from the Isha Foundation who can speak to you more specifically than anyone has about the $3.9 billion person movement that I alluded to before. Mahesh, could you please give us some comments on your foundation? Thank you.
Thank you, David, and the mayor for having this wonderful event. So last year in July, there was a 100-day rally from London to southern India. So it crossed Europe, Middle East, and also Asia. In the 100 days, our organization and the Save Soil movement met with, I think, over 80 countries and world leaders, and that's where the 3.9 billion people were in some way touched or understood about the Save Soil movement. So I don't want to go over all of the information and facts. You guys really have done a lot of homework and have understood all the facts about it. I want to leave you with maybe 3 ways where individual people can really help and do immediate benefits in our day-to-day lives. So one way is we're all on social media. There's a hashtag you can use. It's just Save Soil. Why it's important to do this in social media is the way that trending happens is if you do an Instagram post, for example, with Save Soil hashtag, it amplifies more than what an individual person will know because it aggregates. So the amount of reach that we can have with a social media hashtag is very influential. And this will directly go to government leaders because the government won't invest in a 15 to 20 year endeavor like soil conservation unless people are behind it. And a way that people are behind it is by saying so many people have done a Save Soil hashtag, have been in social media, and have been behind the Save Soil movement. So if you have a post really anything relates to soil. Let's say we're, not only doing farming, but let's say we're on a football field. Well, a football field has grass, and a grass comes from soil. So everything in some way is related to our connection with the earth and our connection with soil. So, I was at a Milwaukee Bucks game, and I decided I'm going to post it, but at the end I put save soil. So it's some small way that we can immediately make an impact with the social media. The other way is we can become an earth buddy. What that means is on the Conscious Planet site, you can become an earth buddy, and then you can it gives you tools to become an ambassador for the Save Soil movement. And becoming an earth buddy is free. It just takes a few minutes to sign up. And the third thing is we're writing letters to our politicians and our government leaders. Even we had a campaign where children were writing letters to President Biden or the state senators or, U.S. senators. And what this does is, again, it shows that individual people care about soil conservation. So on the Conscious Planet website, there are templates where you can actually write letters. It just takes a minute, put a stamp in the mail, and you can actually write letters to our politicians and say a group of people, a number of people, millions and billions of people across the world are interested in soil conservation and all the great work. And it's really heartening to see that Racine looks like at the forefront with all of these initiatives and these movements. And I just wanted to share some practical ways that we can connect on a daily basis and really make a change. And not all of us have access to farms or these kind of local initiatives, but we can make our difference in our own way. So thank you for your time. I'll give it back to David, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mahesh. Next, please welcome Donna Delmar and Rachel Troboff from Racine Urban Garden Network.
Hello. I don't know what happened to Rachel, but I guess it's just me. Thank you for inviting me here. As she said, my name is Donna Delmar, and I'm the board president for the Racine Urban Garden Network. And our mission is to contribute to the health of our communities by creating spaces for people who can grow their own food. We have 9 gardens throughout the city. We try to place them in food deserts, or what are called food deserts. And our vision is eventually, to make it so that everybody in Racine who wants to grow their own food will have the space, the tools, the knowledge, et cetera, to be able to do that. Dave alluded to this earlier, but our health is directly contingent upon the nutritional value of the food that we eat. And the food that we eat, the nutritional content, is directly dependent on the health of the soil that it's grown in. And to have farming practices where, there's artificial fertilizers and pesticides that have to be used because things aren't done in a more natural, organic way, really helps to mitigate the health of our food. So yes, when you do go to the grocery store and you shop the produce aisle and you think, wow, I'm eating really healthy, well, maybe you're not eating as healthy as you think. I just want to give one example of our gardens, and it's the Marquette Garden, which is on Marquette Street. It's about a city block. It was our first garden, and we were able to take a deserted city lot and amend the soil and institute gardening practices and establish planting beds, and through the last 12 years have turned what would have been a sort of blighted city block into a beautiful oasis where with over 100 beds and over 70 gardeners, that not only people can grow food for themselves, but there's lots of people who come in and grow food to be donated to food banks. And I think Mayor Mason might have left, but I wanted to thank him and the city because they just gave us a generous grant to establish a teaching garden as well. So we can not only do, but we can also spread the word. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. Please welcome our next speaker and my good friend, Sister Janet Weicker from the Zero Waste Food Waste Compost Committee.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you all for coming. We've heard a lot about why it's important to save soil. We need to care for the health of the soil because it's what feeds us. One of the best ways we can do that is putting compost back into the soil. Compost, as you know, is made of organic material. Anything that grows green, whether it's trees or shrubs, even weeds and leaves from plants and flowers. Right now, as Dave mentioned, here in Racine, we have a committee that's called the Food Waste Compost Committee, and we are trying to get a citywide food waste compost program started. Instead of throwing food scraps into the trash bin where they get taken to a landfill, it can be collected and turned into a nutrient-rich material that will improve the soil and certainly help grow better food. Some people are able to compost in their own backyards. Do any of you compost? Great, great. And they use different types of composting at home. There are bins and there are tumblers, etc., or you could even put it right into the ground. Others take their food scraps and they take it to like urban garden centers, or they'll take it to the church down the street has a composting program. But lots and lots of people just throw their food waste into the trash bin. Here in, it takes an awful lot of compost to grow healthy food and supply all of our gardens. In some cities across the United States, there's a citywide program where it's like mandatory, like we have garbage pickup and trash pickup and recycling. They have bins where the city comes and picks up the compost. We're not there yet, but we would like to get there. Some people use their incinerator, their in-sink garbage disposal to get rid of their food waste. And that's a good way too, because here in Racine, they use that gas that comes from that food waste to power the wastewater treatment plant. And they also get some fertilizer at the end, some composting. However, not all people do that. Most people throw their food waste into the trash where it gets hauled to a landfill. And the managers of landfills say that about 1/4 of the amount of material that go into a landfill, 1/4 is food waste. Now, that's not good. It's not good for the landfill, it's not good for the climate, it's not good for the city budget. Can you imagine how much better it would be if the food waste from every home, restaurant, institution in the Racine area were composted and used for fertilizer? So we hope to see that we will not be wasting food into the future. And we hope that many of you will consider joining the food waste program when it gets started in the city. There's one other thing I wanted to mention. Saturday is EcoFest. And at EcoFest, you'll have a chance to hear more about composting and a chance to take a survey related to your interest in joining the food waste composting program. So, ironically, or not so, the title of this year's EcoFest is called Tending Our Roots. Tending Our Roots. And we're going to have 3 speakers that are addressing that topic. And I'm probably most excited about our first speaker. His name is Michigan. It means turtle in his native language. And he's going to be talking about the sacred relationship that Native peoples have with the soil. Another speaker is going to talk about how we care for our trees and shrubs, so important to hold soil in its place. And a third person is going to be talking about how to grow more healthy soil. It's going to be a fun-filled day. It's Saturday from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock on the Racine Gateway campus. So we hope that you'll be able to attend and invite your family, friends, and neighbors to come as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister. Next, please welcome Ron Detch of Solutions in the Land.
So there's been a lot of interesting things said already. You guys didn't leave me much. You pretty much covered it all. So my little company is called Solutions in the Land. We formed this company 10 years ago because of all the work I've done in urban areas, Milwaukee, Detroit, and other places, and the work I've done in rural areas. It became pretty apparent that of all the problems we have, our societal problems, up on Teutonia Street in Milwaukee, the lack of food or a food desert, the solution's in the land. That thin layer that separates heaven and earth that we're here to talk about today that we call soil is a living organism, and that organism gives all life, and we walk on it like it's dirt. So as someone mentioned, we've lost a little bit of it. In fact, instead of talking about being past peak oil, we probably should be talking about being past peak soil. More than half our soil has left us, and of the soil that's left, it's not in very good shape. Recently, I had an occasion to talk to some folks that wanted to reinvigorate some wheat production on the eastern part of the Sahara Desert in Egypt. So since the war broke out in Ukraine, the Turkish people realized that they get about 10 million metric tons of wheat from Ukraine a year, and they're concerned about where they're going to eat in the future. So they thought maybe if they took the Aswan Dam water and redirected it towards the eastern part of the Sahara Desert, they could make up that difference. And when you do the math on it, what you realize is that people have been walking past that part of the world for 10,000 years and have never considered growing anything on it because it's less than 1% organic matter. It is sand. It doesn't have water. They have extremely high temperatures. And then you just look at the abundance of what we have. And here, are people that are trying to make a food deposit come out of this nothingness. And so it really kind of sobers us up a little bit in looking at this rich soil that we have. So I'm not from the area, I'm from Kenosha. So we just lost about a third of our remaining farmland in the county of Kenosha to a 5,300 acre solar field. And that solar field crosses 89 wetlands, and they've assured that nothing's going to happen with those wetlands, of course. So what could possibly go wrong? But my company, Solutions in the Land, we do a lot of research, we do outreach, we consult with landowners. We want to find new ways to have better utilization of things that we already have while we're restoring the rich things that we do have, like our water systems. We have beautiful, wonderful water systems in this part of the world. We have great soil. So we're looking today about if you farm an acre of corn, you have 100% utilization of that acre. And if you come in and you take that acre away and you put solar panels on it, now you have a single use and you've got 100% utilization of the acre. But why can't we have them coexist? Why can't we have the soil underneath grow native plants that can be grazed and native plants that provide pollinators and at the same time generate the same amount of electricity? So I'm convinced that we should be getting more than 200% utilization of every acre because our acres are disappearing rapidly. We're working on a project in McHenry County, Illinois, which is just south of Kenosha County. 70% of the wells are going to go dry in the next 10 years because of the reconfiguration of the water systems. And over half the farmland has been repurposed into other things, and solar is just starting to move into the area. So I didn't come to talk about gloom and doom. I'm extremely optimistic about almost everything because there's a greater awareness not only of soil but of our food systems. And I'm here to tell you today, we don't have a farming system and a food system. We only have one system, and it's our food and farming system. And it is the food choices that we make that drives our farming system. So as we have CSAs, and we run a little CSA there at Kenosha, as well as doing some field crops. We try to work with large-scale agriculture. We try to work with small-scale agriculture. So if we look at our food and farming systems, the more that it gets spread to the periphery, the more small-scale food production's going on, the more innovation we have, the better agriculture we have, the less risk we have. And oh, by the way, they say that we're going to get a little warmer, that we've always been plagued with in this part of the world, cooler near the lake. Well, when it's 125 degrees outside, cooler near the lake is going to be a good thing, not a bad thing. But we're also looking at what crops with climate change, and climate change is something we're dealing with on a daily basis. We work with farms for climate change plans. Every farm needs one because the climate has already changed. But we're also looking at how different crops will grow. We need to be looking as our climate shifts. Yes, we need to be doing everything we can to prevent the things that are causing the erratic climate, but we also need to be looking at crops that now can grow here better than they could before, and crops that did well here before but can't necessarily grow now. So it's been said here a time or two that the health of the people is the health of the nation. If we look at the health of our nation with 2/3 of people having chronic illnesses, we could probably say if that correlation is true, then our soil must be sick. And as we get out into the farmland and we look at the erosion and we look at the missing microbes in the soil and all those things, yes, our soil is very sick, and it's because of our farming practices. But like I said, I'm bringing good news today. A lot of large-scale farmers are converting over to focus on soil health. We've had Michael Pollan and everyone else, Food Inc., bashing American agriculture as being so destructive to the environment, and yes, that's true. Yes, that has occurred, and I like to say that American farmers have tremendous capacity to do enormous things. So when they do the right thing, they have enormous capacity to do the right thing fast. So I was just out taking pictures a couple of weeks ago. One really large farmer is out there with huge compost piles, great big compost spreaders, big tractors. Some of these guys are putting out 6 and 8 tons of compost per acre. If somebody came along and said, Mr. Big Farmer, you ought to be spreading 2 tons of compost per acre. And he says, well, okay, I'll spread 4, I'll spread 6. And so we're seeing more cover crops. We're seeing edge of field practices. If you come to Summers Farm down in Kenosha, you'll see that we leave tractor aisles around every field so that we have access to them. We have the premise that if you have to farm every square foot of a piece of land, you're probably doing something wrong. You should be able to still have access to the field. So now the NRCS is calling those edge of field practices, where you leave a trail around the outside. So instead of planting corn everywhere, you plant some hay, you bale the hay up. You got edge of field practices, you got tractor aisles, you got access to them. Oh, now you brought back pollinators and just a whole lot of good things that have happened. The other message I have for you today is what you're doing on a small scale important? It's absolutely critical to our future. Small scale agriculture has always brought about innovation. Compost has come from small scale farmers. A lot of innovation in our food system comes from small scales. We don't live in a world anymore where we judge rightfulness by size. We don't need or should not ever be comparing that something's better because it's bigger, and it's not necessarily better because it's smaller. But individuals in a community like this self-organizing and growing this awareness and growing these foods, you're changing food choices in the supermarkets. Roundy's is getting the message. People want nutritionally dense, healthy, organic foods. 10 years ago you saw organics in Roundy's, but about 10 years ago when Whole Foods decided to come to Milwaukee, the Roundy's reset 168 stores and said, we're going to put organic out front and center. And so it's you folks that create that change. So keep up the good work, and we'll see you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful remarks. Thank you. And our last speaker is from Starry Nights Farm. Please welcome Paul Maggio. Maggio.
Hi, I'm Paul, and I'm a farmer. And yeah, it's nice to see this. It's brought back some memories. I mean, I'm not a farmer by birth or by origin. This is my first time generation. Thank you, first generation farmer. And we used to live in the city. Well, I grew up in Kenosha, but we used to live in the city of Chicago, in the city of Chicago. And seeing the Montessori school here where our kids went to and all the things that that curriculum brings really brought back some memories. Starting a community garden in Chicago too also was something that we got involved with. Composting in our garage was some things that we did. So those were all things that kind of led us along the path, and then back to our home county of Kenosha, and we're in western Kenosha County. And basically what we do is we farm perennial, which means basically everything is in pasture. And that's wonderful for soils, for plants. And we graze animals. So we have about a 140-acre farm. And we graze, during the grazing season, over 100 cattle. We also have pork that we raise on pasture during the growing season. We raise chickens. We're going to start with goats this year too, so it's a multi-species, multi-layer, and animals really, they do wonders for soil. We call it closing the loop, which basically is currently with farming, we have to put a lot of inputs into the soil. So we have to put chemicals, fertilizer, different things to get that plant to grow chemically. What the animals do for us is it really helps make the biological loop work. So everything gets recycled. And it's less and less inputs we have to put into the farm every year. And it really makes farming easy, because easier in a sense that nature does a lot of the heavy lifting for us. The animals do a lot of heavy lifting for us. And it really does well for us and our neighbors. We have the Kenosha County Park that surrounds us. There's a beautiful 40-acre lake there. And I want to say that we do play a part there because we're not tilling soil. We don't have runoff into that. And it's a beautifully clear lake that's there that borders us. So I guess, one thing we think about is local. We don't ship our product anyplace. It's all a 60-mile radius, people down from Chicago, Milwaukee, out to Lake Geneva, Racine, Kenosha, that support us. So I think that's one thing too, as far as finding ways to know your farmer, support your farmer, and you'll find, I hope, and we'll probably soon have proof with that. We're going through a process of nutrient density studies on the beef that we raise at our farm, and that our practices hopefully are going to show that we are doing some things right, and maybe farming closer to nature helps not only our soils, but our animal health, human health. As a farmer, it helps our family health, and then also our communities, that those monies are recirculated into our local communities. So thank you for having me here, and if there's any questions, or if you'd ever like to come, we do offer tours at our farm. We have some events out there, public education. We just started a watershed group in Kenosha County to have farmers that want to use those type of practices to help our watershed and clean our water. So thank you.
This concludes our program for today. I want to thank everyone again for coming, and I want to remind you about EcoFest again from 9 to 1 on Saturday at the Racine campus of Gateway Technical College. I also wanted to quickly mention Unity Racine, the groups that came together today to make this program possible. That includes the Racine Coalition of Peace and Justice, Racine Urban Garden Network Coming Together Racine, League of United Latin American Citizens, 9 to 5 Wisconsin, the Dominican Center of Justice Resources, the Clean Power Coalition, Greening Greater Racine, Racine Zero Waste Initiative, the Social Justice Committee of Olympia Brown Unitarian Universalist Church, and Quaker Friends of Kenosha Racine. Did I miss anybody, Sonali? Okay, great. All right, thank you very much. Have a good day. Save the soil.